The beer hit Major Rachel Torres square in the chest, soaking through her civilian jacket before she could move. Cold liquid splashed across her neck while 4 Army Rangers doubled over laughing at their table. They'd spotted an opportunity. A petite woman drinking alone at a Fort Benning watering hole on a Thursday night. Someone they figured would make their buddies laugh and boost their egos in front of the locals watching. What they missed was the Ranger tab tucked in her glove compartment. The Purple Heart she'd received after taking enemy fire in Kandahar while coordinating a rescue that saved 11 soldiers. And the reality that she'd completed 5 rotations in Afghanistan running reconnaissance missions the Pentagon would never declassify. They couldn't know about the burn scar hidden beneath her collar from the mortar attack that wounded her and killed her radio operator, or understand that in 8 hours these same Rangers would report to a command brief where she'd be introduced as their new battalion operations officer. In this moment, wiping beer from her face while Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen grinned at her from across the room, they believed they'd just pulled off something hilarious. They were about to discover they'd committed a career-defining error, and the officer they'd humiliated was preparing to deliver an education and hard-earned authority they'd remember for the rest of their lives. The operations complex at Fort Benning's Ranger Training Brigade stood beneath a humid Georgia morning, the air thick with moisture that clung to everything. Inside the main operations center, Major Rachel Torres reviewed training schedules on a digital display, her movements efficient and deliberate. At 31 and standing 5'3", she'd understood from the beginning that physical stature carried no weight against proven competence. Her Army combat uniform was crisp and regulation. The ribbon display above her left pocket documented experiences most field-grade officers hadn't accumulated. Bronze Star with Valor device. Army Commendation Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters. 4 Army Achievement Medals. Fifth from the end was a citation most people wouldn't recognize, a classified commendation from Task Force operations in Afghanistan for missions that remained redacted. Her auburn hair was secured in a tight bun, exposing a patch of scarred tissue that ran from behind her right ear down her neck. She sometimes rubbed it unconsciously, a habit born from Kandahar province where a mortar round killed Specialist Ryan Delgado and left her with second-degree burns and temporary hearing loss that lasted 9 weeks. The door swung open and Colonel Andrew Mitchell walked in, a career infantry officer who'd coordinated with special operations for 18 months. He'd reviewed her personnel file twice before endorsing her for this assignment, still processing what the documentation showed. Major Torres, he said, formations at 0800. You prepared for the reception? She pivoted, brown eyes calm and measuring. As prepared as possible, sir. They are not briefed yet. Mitchell moved beside her at the display. The battalion doesn't know. They're expecting Major Hendricks. When you walk in instead, there's going to be resistance. Rachel acknowledged with a slight nod, her focus returning to the screen. She'd invested years learning to anticipate resistance. There's one more situation, Mitchell said carefully. 4 of your Rangers were documented last night. Bar incident downtown. Witnesses reported they harassed a civilian woman. No formal charges. Rachel's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Names. Mitchell handed her a tablet. Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen, Sergeant First Class Kyle Morrison, Specialist Andre Williams, Private First Class Daniel Park. All assigned to your reconnaissance element. She scrolled the incident report, absorbing the witness descriptions, the victim profile that described her exactly. Her thumb stopped on a single detail, declined to pursue charges. Anything else? Mitchell shook his head. They're capable operators when focused. Young, arrogant, but they deliver under stress. Rachel returned the tablet, already computing how this would unfold when those 4 Rangers understood who they'd doused 12 hours ago. Rachel Torres learned about being underestimated on a New Mexico ranch where being the smallest in any group meant proving yourself twice over for half the acknowledgement. Her father, Miguel Torres, had deployed with the 82nd Airborne before returning to raise 4 children he prepared like soldiers. He taught her marksmanship at 8 using a Remington 870, taught her tactical thinking before she grasped the concepts. She enlisted at 19 as an intelligence analyst, the only specialty available immediately. Her objective was straightforward: accumulate deployment experience, then commissioned through Officer Candidate School and pursue special operations when pathways expanded for women. Kandahar Province, Afghanistan, transformed everything. March 2012. She was 22, attached to 4th Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment as their battalion intelligence NCO. 3rd Platoon moved into Jari district to capture a Taliban commander. Intelligence identified as coordinating IED networks. The operations seemed routine. Intelligence was incomplete. 3rd Platoon entered a coordinated ambush that killed their team leader within seconds. Rachel was positioned 40 meters back when the machine gun opened fire, rounds tearing through body armor and equipment. She advanced, staying low, moving towards Sergeant Delgado, whose radio was their only communications link. She remembered the acrid smell of propellant mixing with dust and fey. Remembered Delgado looking at her, trying to speak, his strength fading as shock took hold. She established communications, directed their response, coordinated the quick reaction force while rounds impacted around her position. She saved Delgado that day. 2 others weren't as fortunate. The mortar came during extraction. An indirect fire barrage the Taliban had pre-registered on likely helicopter landing zones. The impact killed Specialist Ryan Martinez outright, threw Rachel 8 feet, left her with burns across her neck and shoulder and metal fragments the surgeons removed in Germany. They awarded her a Bronze Star with valor device. They didn't restore Martinez or the hearing in her right ear that took months to recover or the nights when she startled awake smelling cordite and sand. When Army Special Operations began quietly evaluating women for Ranger School in 2015, Rachel had already commissioned through OCS and was serving as an intelligence officer. She was among 12 who attended initial assessment. She was one of 3 who entered Ranger School. She graduated with Class 08-16, the 3rd woman to earn the tab. The first 2 had transitioned to other assignments. Rachel completed everything: Ranger Assessment Phase, Derby Phase, Mountain Phase, Florida Phase, training that taught her Pashto and Dari, to navigate by stars, to lead patrols with precision that eliminated hesitation. Rachel pulled out her phone, scrolling to a photo she kept but rarely examined. Martinez, Delgado, and 8 others from 3rd Platoon, taken 3 days before Kandahar. They were smiling, exhausted, covered in dust. Martinez was on the left, 24 and invincible, no idea that 72 hours later he'd be gone. She studied the photo, memorizing faces she'd never forget. Then she closed the phone, turned on lights, and began writing the training schedule for Chen, Morrison, Williams, and Park. If they were going to work for her, they'd earn it the same way she had, through performance that proved character mattered more than assumptions. The objective wasn't punishment. The objective was transformation. The training began with a 25-mile ruck march through Fort Benning Ranges starting at 0400. Chen, Morrison, Williams, and Park found themselves at the front, setting pace for the entire battalion. Rucks loaded to 70 pounds while Torres ran the route in boots and uniform, checking times without appearing winded. She didn't shout, just materialized beside them like a ghost whenever someone slowed. "Pick it up, Sergeant. Your team depends on you." Week 2 brought live fire room clearance with force-on-force ammunition. Torres ran every scenario first, demonstrating technique, her movements precise and aggressive in ways that only came from hundreds of actual entries. When Chen's team failed to secure a corner and missed a simulated enemy, she reset the building and walked them through methodically, physically positioning personnel, adjusting angles. She never mentioned the bar, just trained them like they mattered. Week 3 involved mountainous operations, rappelling, navigation under load, survival skills in harsh terrain. Williams struggled with a rappel tower, freezing halfway down a 50-foot face. Torres was beside him before safety personnel, her hands on his harness, voice cutting through panic with certainty. "Look at me, Williams. You're not falling. Control your descent." He controlled it, reached bottom shaking and embarrassed. That night she found him in the dining facility and sat across from him. "You freeze on a mountainside again, you die. So do the people depending on you." Her voice was matter-of-fact. Everyone freezes the first time. The question is whether you overcome it the second time. How do you overcome it? You recognize fear is just data. Your body is identifying a threat. You acknowledge it, then address the threat. Tomorrow you go first. Williams went first. He succeeded. The real test came week 6, a 72-hour field problem simulating a direct action raid gone wrong. The scenario was brutal. Infiltrate denied territory on foot, conduct surveillance on a high-value target, call in simulated strike, extract under pursuit by ranger instructors authorized to hunt them relentlessly. Torres assigned Chen as team leader, Morrison as point man, Williams as communications, Park as medic. The 12-kilometer night movement went smoothly. They reached the observation position at 0300, established overwatch. That's when complications started. Chen's initial position was too exposed. Torres, shadowing from 70 meters, keyed her radio. Reaper 6, Ghost 1, adjust east. You're silhouetted. Chen corrected, face burning. 8 hours in position documenting patterns. Morrison spotted an opposing force patrol that would have compromised their location. They repositioned quietly, continued the mission. The strike call went perfectly. Then came extraction. Opposing forces didn't just pursue. They anticipated, cutting off primary exfiltration and forcing Chen's team into difficult terrain. Blank fire erupted from 3 directions as instructors closed in. Chen called break contact, moving to alternate extraction. Williams' radio took a simulated hit. Torres positioned herself between the team and opposing forces, drawing fire. 40 hours in, they were exhausted, pinned in a ravine with instructors closing. Morrison was hit, simulated casualty, chest wound. They improvised a litter, kept moving, rotating carries every 100 meters. Chen's navigation became sloppy from fatigue, costing them 90 minutes backtracking. Williams maintained communications, situation reports every 30 minutes, voice steady despite shaking hands. Hours 6 to 5, they reached the final extraction point, a clearing where helicopters would recover them. Opposing forces were 400 meters back. The helicopters were inbound when Torres' voice came over the radio. All elements, Ghost 1. Scenario change. Opposing forces have indirect fire. Your landing zone is compromised. Identify new extraction and report within 20 minutes or mission fails. Chen's expression went blank. Morrison cursed. Williams pulled the map, started scanning. He pointed to high ground 900 meters northeast. Higher elevation, defendable. Chen looked at terrain between. Steep, exposed, no cover. But Williams was correct. They moved. Opposing forces saw them immediately. They sprinted uphill, legs screaming, lungs burning, litter bouncing between carriers. Williams called new coordinates, voice cracking but clear. They reached the high ground with opposing forces 300 meters back. Helicopters inbound, 90 seconds. Hold position. Chen established perimeter, blank fire providing suppression. Helicopters came fast and low, ropes dropping. They extracted in 50 seconds, hauling Morrison aboard last, collapsing as aircraft lifted. When they landed, Torres was waiting on the flight line, arms crossed. 72 hours. 0 mission failures. You adapted. You cared for your wounded. You accomplished the objective. She looked at each directly. That's the standard. Welcome to the battalion. The formal brief came 4 days later. The entire battalion assembled for final pre-deployment certification. Colonel Mitchell stood beside a screen displaying deployment information, but everyone understood this wasn't about logistics. Torres entered from a side door in dress uniform, ribbon rack fully displayed, tab polished. Behind her walked 2 men in service uniforms, senior officers who commanded respect without speaking. Mitchell called the formation to attention. Major General Robert Dawson, Commander, 75th Ranger Regiment, and Colonel James Bradford, 3rd Battalion. The room went silent. Dawson stepped forward. Most of you don't know your S3's complete background. Before we deploy personnel into combat, I want everyone to understand precisely who's leading your operations. He gestured to Torres. Major Rachel Torres, call sign Ghost. Ranger School Class 08-16. 4 combat deployments with Ranger Battalion. Direct action and reconnaissance in Kandahar, Helmand, and Nangarhar provinces. 68 combat missions, 0 friendly casualties. Bronze Star with valor for actions during Operation Resolute, where she coordinated artillery support under fire that extracted her element and saved 12 personnel. He paused. Before commissioning, Sergeant Torres served with 4th Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment in Kandahar Province. Awarded Bronze Star with valor for treating casualties and directing response under direct fire during a Taliban ambush. She saved 3 Rangers, lost 2 others, took shrapnel and burns that should have killed her, and maintained communications throughout. Chen felt his stomach drop. Colonel Bradford stepped forward. I served with Major Torres in Afghanistan. Watched her lead operations in terrain that made previous deployments look simple. Watched her make decisions that saved lives and accomplished objectives conventional wisdom said were impossible. He looked directly at Chen, Morrison, Williams, and Park. Some of you may have questioned a female operations officer. Those questions are based on ignorance, not facts. Major Torres earned her position through performance. Anyone who can't accept that doesn't belong in this battalion. Dawson continued. Major Torres has been offered staff positions and school assignments that would keep her in the States. She declined them to lead this deployment because she believes in the mission and in you. He turned to Torres. Major, you have the floor. Rachel stepped to the podium. I don't need to justify my qualifications, but I'll tell you what I expect. Perform to standard, take care of each other, stay professional, come home alive. She paused, brown eyes sweeping the formation. Some of you know that before this brief, there was an incident involving 4 members of this battalion. I was disrespected by personnel who didn't know who I was or what I'd accomplished. Chen wanted to disappear. I'm not raising this to humiliate anyone. I'm raising it because it demonstrates something critical. You can't judge capability by appearance. You earn respect through performance, and you give respect because it's the professional standard. She looked directly at Chen. Staff Sergeant Chen, Sergeant First Class Morrison, Specialist Williams, Private First Class Park. Stand up. They stood, faces burning. These 4 Rangers have spent 6 weeks training harder than everyone else. They've volunteered for every difficult evolution. They've proven they can perform. They've earned their place. She nodded. Sit down. They Saturday. We deploy in 2 weeks. Take care of your families. Finalize your affairs. Be ready. This is the finest battalion I've had the privilege to serve with. We're going to accomplish great things together. She stepped back and Mitchell dismissed the formation. As the room emptied, Chen stood at attention as Torres approached. Behind her, Dawson and Bradford watched with amused expressions. Chen said quietly, I owe you an apology. A real one. What I did, Torres raised a hand. What you did was ignorant, Staff Sergeant. But you've proven ignorance can be corrected. You're a good ranger. Be better. She extended her hand. Chen shook it, feeling calluses and grip strength earned through thousands of repetitions. Yes. Battalion 3 to 75 deployed to Forward Operating Base Shank, Afghanistan, running counterinsurgency operations across Logar Province. 4 months in, their element was caught in a coordinated ambush near Pulialam. RPGs and automatic weapons fire disabled their lead vehicle, killing the gunner instantly. Torres exited under fire, extracted the driver while rounds impacted around her, organized defensive positions, and directed close air support while treating casualties. When the quick reaction force arrived, they found Battalion 3 to 75 in a defensive perimeter with all wounded secured. 9 months later, they rotated home with commendations and 0 friendly fatalities. Chen requested to extend his deployment. Back at Fort Benning, standing outside Torres's office for final debrief, he asked the question that had troubled him since that night at the bar. How did you know to just walk away? Torres leaned back. Because responding wouldn't have changed anything. You didn't know who I was, and telling you wouldn't have made you believe it. People don't learn from being told. They learn from being shown. Besides, I knew I'd get the opportunity to teach you eventually. Outside, Georgia's sun set over Fort Benning, turning everything orange and gold. Rachel stood at her window, watching, thinking about Martinez and Delgado and all the others who hadn't made it home. The scar on her neck caught fading light, a reminder of Kandahar and the cost of underestimation. Somewhere out there, another young woman was deciding if she had what it required to attempt something people said was impossible. Another battalion was preparing to deploy with a leader they weren't certain they could trust. And Rachel Torres would be there, leading from the front, demonstrating through action what words could never prove, showing that capability had nothing to do with demographics and everything to do with will. She turned back to her desk, pulled up the roster for the next deployment cycle, and returned to work.